Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third online public lecture. The University of Central Asia is pleased to host a series of public lectures as one of the outcomes of the Digital Transformation in Central Asia conference, held in Bishkek and Naryn, Kyrgyz Republic, on October 4th to 6th, 2019. Organized by the University of Central Asia, the State Committee for Information Technology and Communications, and the High Technology Park of the Kyrgyz Republic. This international conference was the first of its kind in the region. For further information on the conference outcomes, please visit dtca.kg. Today's topic is understanding people and designing technology, thinking and building toward sustainable development. I'm happy to introduce a young scholar, Dr. Sayed Iштиак Ahmed. Dr. Sayed Iштиак Ahmed is an assistant professor of computer science at the University of Toronto in Canada. He leads the third space research group there. He conducts research in the intersection between human-computer interaction, HCI, and information and communication technology and development, ICTD. He received his PhD from Cornell University in 2017. His PhD research focused on the design challenges around voice, which he defines through access, autonomy, and accountability. Most of his early research was done in Bangladesh and India, where he conducted ethnography and design studies with many underprivileged communities, including ready-made garment factory workers, evicted slum dwellers, rickshaw drivers, mobile phone repairers, and victims of sexual harassment. Dr. Ahmed has received multiple awards for his publications, including Best Paper Award in ACM, CHI, and ICTD. Dr. Ahmed's work has been supported by various national and international organizations, including the National Science Foundation of United States of America, National Institute of Health of USA, Intel, Microsoft Research, IBM Research, Samsung Research, the World Bank, and National Institute of Mental Health of Bangladesh. His current research is being supported by the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, NSERC of Canada, and the Canada Foundation for Innovation. Please welcome Dr. Sayed Iштиак Ahmed.
All right, thanks, Mr. Shaukat, for your kind introduction. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ishtiaque Ahmed, and today I'll be talking about understanding people and designing technology, thinking and building toward sustainable development.
Excuse me, Dr. Iштиак, could you please turn on your video? Sorry.
Sure.
Yes, okay.
All right, thank you. So I am Ishtiaque Ahmed, an assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science at University of Toronto in Canada. And I graduated from Cornell University with my PhD in 2017. I am originally from Bangladesh, where I received my bachelor and master's degree in computer science, where I also taught for 2 years. So today, this is the outline of my lecture. First, I'll be talking about my research objective and approach, then my research questions, then I will walk you through some of the projects that I've been doing in last few years, and then I'll be briefly talking about my future work. So first, my research objective and approach. So I grew up in Bangladesh during 90s and early 2000, and I was seeing information and communication technology was coming into the country and making changes into the lives of people. But I was wondering if that was the kind of changes the local people actually wanted. So my goal was to understand the needs of this underserved population and work with them to improve the quality of their life with the help of the technology. When I was an undergraduate student there with many other undergraduate students like me, I formed the first human-computer interaction research group in Bangladesh called HCI group. With this group of people for the next 5 or 6 years, I have worked with various marginalized population in Bangladesh and India, including ready-made garments workers, taxi drivers, victims of sexual harassment, and mobile phone repairers, and among many others. My work falls in the intersection between two established research streams within computer science called human-computer interaction, or HCI, and information and communication technology for development, or ICTD. And all my works have been published in top HCI and ICTD conferences in last few years. So first, I'll give you a brief idea of what this means, this ICTD, what we do, what kind of computing technology we build, and why. Many of you might have heard of the technologies which are cutting edge, with which, like, people have been thinking about their desired future with smart cities and artificial intelligence. But the fact is that for the vast majority of the people around the world, especially from the global south, those technologies do not work. So the researchers in HCI and ICTD, they work for the people in the global south, in third world country, and make technology work for them. Some of the examples of this technology is community radio, as you can probably see in the screen on the left side, what is kind of like a version of Twitter for poor people in the villages that are widely popular in countries like India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. You might have also heard or used the easy mobile money transferring system like M-Pesa. This was also a system built by ICTD researchers for making money transferring easy and convenient for people in developing countries. Then one laptop per child is one of these many great contributions of ICTD scholars, where they built a very cheap and affordable, easy to use laptop for the children of developing countries that could overcome the challenges that they face at their schools with not having the proper educational support. These and many other technologies for the last 10 to 20 years have been changing the way people would live in developing countries. Now, this is not very easy for computer engineers to design and develop technology for poor people, or the people with low literacy, or people living in a place where the culture is not very easy for us to understand, because oftentimes we misread the problem because we are not familiar with their culture. There are resource constraints. Those people often do not have a lot of resources to use. There are cultural barriers. Sometimes they do not like to use the technology that we build. There's lack of training. You give them some technology to use, but they cannot use because they do not have that training. There are corruption in politics. That's often, visible in that part of the world. And then the lack of maintenance and repair is another challenge. You build a technology, then that gets broken and there is nobody to fix that. So in this ICTD area, oftentimes we focus a lot on the problem of actual problem identification. How do we know what the actual problem is? Then we think about, after developing technology, how can we make the technology sustainable for a long time? Because if it gets broken, it's very hard to fix that. And then the cultural impact of a technology. It's not only enough for a computer scientist to just build the technology, throw it there and see that it's working. What are the broader cultural impact a technology can make? For addressing this multifaceted problem, I start my research by what I call understanding people with their culture, politics, economy, history, and society. And I connect that with technology that are accessible, inclusive, robust, low cost, and secure. So this was kind of like the two worlds of humanities and computer science that I bring together and do my research for making innovative technologies. For this, in my research, I draw theories from a wide range of disciplines, including development sociology, critical theory, STS, political economy, and cultural anthropology. And I make connection of those with computer science disciplines, subdisciplines, including graph theory, computational geometry, mobile computing, social media, and computer games. In short, I call my research as a mixture of ethnography and computing. So let's now explore some of the research questions that I asked through my research. So first of all, in today's world, we often think ourselves floating around data. Data is everywhere. We are getting information from all over the places, especially with the help of this information and communication technologies. We get our information from social media like Facebook and Twitter. We get information when we read books, listen to radios, watch television, or read newspapers. But how many times have we thought that we are not actually getting information of many people around the world? For example, think about the low literate rickshaw drivers in Bangladesh. They're 1/5 of the whole population of the world are illiterate. They cannot read and write. And we don't hear from them in our information world. They are missing. Then even if the people who talk on social media and other places, they often do not talk about some problems which are tabooed or stigmatized. For example, women who have experiences of sexual harassment, they do not talk about that on social media, unless like we have seen a couple of exceptions in recent days. Then there are people who do not talk about their problems because they are afraid. Think about the factory workers in many places of the world. They do not talk about their problems because they fear of losing their job. And then there are many people around the world who are also afraid because they could be repatriated, like for the refugees, and from out of that fear, they also do not talk on social media. So when you use social media and other news sources to learn about the world, you actually do not hear from these people. They are missing. As a result, any technology, any intelligent technology that is built based on this information will not work for them because their data is absent there. So in my research, I try to address this problem, and I ask how I can give these people the voice. That's the overarching research objective that I have. And here by voice, I define it as a comprehensive socio-technical process for obtaining freedom. How can they become free of the obstacles that are around them, and they become a part of this information communication technology world that we also belong to? So I break down the problem of voice into 4 aspects, namely access, freedom, visibility, and infrastructure. In today's talk, I'll be mostly talking about access and freedom and briefly describe my projects on visibility and infrastructure. So this is the question that I ask in my research. First, how can technology be accessible to all? How to achieve social freedom over a technology? How can people make their voice heard? And how to make infrastructure inclusive and sustainable? So let's go to some of my projects that I have done to understand more about these research problems. First, let's talk about access. As I said, 1 in every 5 people in the world are illiterate. They cannot read and write. Then there are many people who can read and write in a limited scope. For example, they are semi-literate, they only know 1 language, or they can probably read the letters but not the numbers, or vice versa. So their literacy is limited. And for those people, using computer is a lot of challenge. Think about your mobile phone, all of a sudden has been converted to a language that you cannot read and write. How can you still use the phone? And this is the challenge for those like 1/5 people of the world every day. And with the proliferation of computer science and electrical engineering over the last 20 years, we could actually solve some of the access problem for the poor people around the world. Now we have affordable network that people can actually buy data and use. the mobile phone devices have become inexpensive, but this problem of appropriate user interface for low literacy users has still remained a big challenge. In the past, people have tried to solve this problem. On the left, as you can see, this is a design initiative by Microsoft Research where they tried to solve this problem by replacing text with images. So think about your contact list on your phone, and the text are replaced by the picture of the person whose number it is. And to some extent, this solves the problem that you find the actual person by their image and then you call them. But this is not actually a very good solution. If you have 200 contacts on your phone, you have to find the picture that you were looking for, and it's a tedious process. Also, you need to learn how to do the searching, which is a challenge for low literate people. Another solution that came from Carnegie Mellon around the same time was a voice-based interface. The idea was pretty simple that, if you cannot read and write, why don't you talk to the phone like we do often with the voice assistant system in our computers like Siri or Cortana or Google Home these days. But the problem here is that for the low literate people, the accent is not perfect, that their pronunciation is not correct. And also doing this kind of processing requires a lot of memory of the phones, and which poor people do not have that much capability in their phones. So as a result, although these two solutions had some degree of success, they were not success in the longer term. So when I was looking at this problem, I realized that both of these two groups of researchers were trying to solve this problem, assuming that one particular mobile phone will be used by one single person. That's kind of like the Western idea of personal computing. But what we found in the field in Bangladesh, that one single phone was also shared by a group of people, by a family or friends. Like in one family, there is only one mobile phone, and all the members of the family were using that phone. And the use of that phone is very different from how one person used their personal mobile phone. When a group of people use a phone together, oftentimes the idea is that if one person is literate, they can use the phone correctly, the other people take their help and they also use that phone. So the problem that exists in the individual mode disappears when you think about the social setting in which people use computers or mobile phones. To understand this problem more, I worked with the illiterate rickshaw drivers in Kamrangichor area in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. I worked with them for 6 months, conducted an ethnography, which means that I went there, I stayed with them, I interviewed them, I conducted participatory observation and focus group discussion. I asked them what they're doing, how they're doing. They all were illiterate rickshaw drivers, but they all were using mobile phones. So there was general curiosity in me, how they are being able to use their phones even without any kind of literacy. So what I found that when they had some individual strategies, some guesswork going on. So they were trying to memorize the images of the letters, and they were making guess while making the phone calls. They were memorizing the serial of the phone calls, and sometimes they were making some other random guesses. Sometimes they were successful, but most of the times they were calling wrong numbers. And if they were using the phone for sending money, they were also wasting money, and sometimes they were getting embarrassed. However, in most of the time, when they were successful, they were actually taking the phone to some of their friends who could actually use the phone better, their literate friends. And they all had this kind of friends, more than one. And they would take their phones to their friends, and then they asked help, and their friends would help them to perform a particular task on their phone. So this was an ecological use of computing that is not often seen in the Western part of the world, but very common in developing countries. So we try to understand this problem better. This is Batshamiya, one of the participants I worked with. This is his beautiful family with his wife and 2 children. And everything that you see in Batshamiya's home is not actually owned by only himself, but he also takes things from his neighbors, and that is also true for all of his neighbors. The culture is very much sharing. They share everything with each other, including their mobile phone. And I try to understand why people in this kind of settings share things with each other. And this led me back to the anthropological theory of the gift given by Marcel Mauss more than 100 years ago. He said that in this kind of communities, gift giving is not actually just a gesture of niceness, but actually mandatory, through which they keep the bond in their community. So why the people, the rickshaw drivers, were helping each other could actually be explained by this culture of gift giving. So I asked them, well, if you could actually take help from your friends and use your mobile phones like that, do you even feel that it's a problem, it's a challenge for you to use the mobile phone, although you are an illiterate person? So they told me that, well, our illiteracy is not necessarily a problem for them for using a mobile phone, because we could actually go to our friends and take help. The problem happens is that when we are not around our friends, when we go outside for our job or for other places, or at night when we couldn't actually go to our friend, then we do not have this help available with us. So unavailability of help is the main challenge that we have. So then we try to understand this problem more and solve this problem by we asked them, well, how can we try to solve this problem? We sat down with them. The person who are on the left, you see this person was the garage owner who would help the rickshaw drivers. We sat down with him and we tried to design the system. And we also sat down with other rickshaw drivers and we asked them to design with us to come up with a solution. What we found over the time is that there is a surprisingly simple solution that we could use for giving people help that they could use. For the help was, the idea was simple. If you're a person who cannot read and write, if you have a phone and you want to call someone, the interface will first direct your call to a person who could help you. They could be your friends or somebody in your family who is literate, and they will perform the task for you, and then a call will be generated from your phone to the person you want to call to. So this actually then became a problem that we deal in computer science with graph theory. So say these are the people in a community who want help, and there are some people in the community who can actually help, the literate nodes, and the blue ones are low literate nodes, and the yellow ones are the helpers who are literate nodes. And then the computer science challenge is to find who can help whom by making these graphs. And then we divided the graphs into 2 bipartite sets, which means that in one group, you divide the whole social network into 2 parts. One set of persons who can help, and the one set of person who would need help. Then we ran some optimized algorithm to find out how we can minimize the number of times a person is asked for help and to maximize the probability that everyone gets help. And this is the algorithm, which is called the stable marriage problem. It's a very common, very famous algorithm in computer science that we used for solving that algorithmic challenge. And then we also added some additional nodes outside their community to understand if those people are also willing to take help from somebody who is not from their community, and to understand whether people take help from the persons who they know or from the person who they don't know. So then we implemented this whole technology in a mobile phone application, which was totally run by text messages because internet was not very easily available there and also a bit expensive. Many people, low-income people wouldn't use. So the whole technology was implemented through text messages. And we also had to deal with another problem that different people were using different versions of mobile phones. So like one version of the phone wasn't enough to solve this problem. And we were also trying to minimize their cost. So we are also like zipping this text messages to make it shorter. And in the receiver's end, we are again unzipping it to reduce their cost. And we also had to think about their privacy because of the person who were helping them, they could actually see the numbers. So we decided how to hide those numbers from them. We are actually making the last 2 digits of the number visible for them to use. This is the mobile phone interface for a help-seeking person on the left. This was surprisingly simple. It's just a one button like in the whole screen, so they cannot make any mistake. Whatever they would click on the screen, a call would be generated to one of the people who were ready to help them. And then the person, this is the interface of the helper, so they could see the contact list, missed call, dialed call, received call, this list of the person who was asking help. And then they could go there, and according to the kind of help that the person was asking, they could select the that person, what they want to call to. And then a call would be generated from the help-seeking person, so the person they were calling. We deployed this technology in the field first with a short deployment with 12 participants for 6 weeks of study. And we wanted to see whether this was a successful deployment and whether people were getting help from it. We asked them questions, we were tracking their use, and we found that there was a significant improvement in the way they were using their phones. Now they were being able to use their phones when they are at home at night, when they are out in their work, because with their user interface, they could actually reach out to their friends and families to who are literate to make the phone calls, which wasn't possible for them before. And then we took it to the next level. We made like a 6 months long longitudinal study to see if the community actually accepts this problem, accepts the solution. And we found that like many interesting findings from this, that how this was, when was like most of the time the help was available, when help was not available, the average number of the phone calls, average availability in a day, success rate of a phone call. And in all aspects, this technology proved to be successful. And now we are working with BRAC. You probably have heard of that, one of the largest NGOs in the world, to make sure how to use this technology for broader purposes. For example, helping the illiterate people to send money, or using like a computer with much more, much more complex actions, how they can use those with the help of their friends and family, or like other people who are experts remotely. So we are thinking about how we can make this other complex actions of a phone or computers doable with this mechanism, using like operating a computer, searching online, using social media or online shopping. And then how can low literate users, not only low literate users, like visually impaired people, blind people could actually take help of that. Old people can take help of that, or refugees who speak another language could help get help from that. And on the other hand, in the helper side, who could be the helpers who could do this kind of help with a small amount of money? This could be unemployed people, or a refugee who has some kind of like an education, or a part-timers for earning more, or like simply the learners who are learning computers. But there are some challenges there too. Sometimes we have to make sure the matching happens between the same genders, because people often hesitate to take help from other gender. Young to old is also a challenge. Sometimes like older people do not want to take help from younger ones. Sometimes they are quarrels, sometimes they go out of budget. We're still working to improve the systems, but the basic understanding is that this technology, the design idea of this technology, takes a design of computing systems from one person's cognitive ability to their graphical interface to their social, political, and cultural spheres, how they live with other people. We could we leverage that their social setting, their social strength to design a technology that is more sustainable in a community? So the next question is that, let's say we can make people technically able to use a technology, but the second question appears, are they still free to talk about what they want to talk? A lot of people around the world can use social media, or they can use like mobile phone and computers, but can they actually speak everything they want to speak of or want to like talk about? Unfortunately, oftentimes that is not the case. As was seen in the project that I've done with the group of women who were sexually harassed in Bangladesh, there was repeated incidents of sexual harassments in Bangladesh over the years, and there are like newspaper reports, police reports that all were showing this incidents were increasing in the country. But the most unfortunate thing was that even if we are getting a lot of reports, most incidents of sexual harassments were actually going unreported because women were not feeling comfortable talking about this, and there are like social stigma around it. So we are thinking how we could solve this problem. So we started, and if we think about this hashtag #MeToo movement, many of you may be familiar with this, happened a couple of years ago. You should know that in developing countries like India or Bangladesh, women did not participate, most women did not participate in this online movement because they were still feeling the social pressure that they start talking about it. The other people around their family, around their society will not take it positively. So we tried to understand the problem, where the root cause is from. We started first with online survey. We anonymously asked women to talk about their problem, and we learned something that we didn't know. For example, one woman, she said, you will hardly find any Bangladeshi girl who traveled on the streets and has not experienced sexual harassment. I mean, some women are brave enough to talk about it, while others remain silent for many reasons. We interviewed them. There are not many women who were actually participating in the interview study. It was hard to get them, but still, like we, with the help of my women colleagues, we took interviews, and we found that when these women could actually share their experiences with others, they felt better. Although it was very difficult for them to find the right person and right place to safely share their experience. And then we also organized a focus group discussion of women. We invited a group of women to talk about this. And there weren't, like, even in this group, the women were not very comfortable to talk about this. And they said, one of them, they said, like, my mother taught me to stay quiet, but I'll ask my daughter to carry a knife. This kind of their expression told us that these women were holding a like grief agonies within them, but it was very hard for them to come up with a solution. So we found that these women that needed on-the-spot help when they were harassed on the streets or in a public place, they wanted to reach out their friends for help or support, and they felt better when they could share their experiences. But there was also this overarching problem of silence. These women were not being able to talk, and we identified that as one of the main design challenges to help them. And this took us back to the post-colonial scholar Gayatri Spivak's famous quote of, "Can the subaltern speak?" She is saying that it's very difficult for the people who are down in the power hierarchy to talk against the people who are on the top of them. For example, it's very hard for a woman to talk against the men who are actually feeding them. So how could we solve this problem? It became a challenge for us. We looked around, we found that in the West, there were technologies like Holaback in US, very popular, where women were reporting against the men who were harassing them sexually, or in the harassment in which is popular in some parts of the Arab world, which is kind of like the same. But here, these women were much more liberated and freer than the women I was working with. So these technologies, when we showed them with our participants, they did not approve. They didn't say that like they would be using this. So we thought that why don't then we start building our own application to help this women. And so they needed on-the-spot help. Could we make an application which could make a loud sound to attract the attract the notice of other people around who could come there and help. Could we inform the police? Could we inform their friends and families around to come there and help? But at the time when I was working in Bangladesh, there was no digital map. So, if you are building this kind of a mobile phone application, which takes a GPS location, and if there is no digital map, that's challenging. And so the first thing that I needed to do was to working with the local students, the group I showed before. With them, we built the digital map of the city, the Dhaka city, which I was working at. That was the first thing. We ran around the streets of the Dhaka city. We made the digital map first. Then we converted this problem with a computational geometry problem of a Voronoi diagram. It might be new to many of you, but it basically identifies each of the location of the crime incidents as a point on a graph. And then we also assume that if a police car is in between 2 points, they could actually cover these two areas. And then this becomes a classical problem of Voronoi diagram and Delaunay triangulation, which we used. I'll not go deeper into this technical details, just so that we'll get details from the overall story. But we basically found a path for the police to come out with a route that they could use for them to easily monitor all the points where the violences are most common. So we prescribed patrolling path for police, which they accepted, and also for the women, we designed and developed this mobile phone application. As you can see, there is a panic button with which the women could press this button and make sound, reach out to their friends, and report an incident if they see before them. There are also mechanisms for sharing their information anonymously through this mobile phone application. It had a corresponding website where we were live broadcasting this harassment reports, the heat map, where the harassment happens and when, so you could see which areas are safer when or not. So if you were traveling through that area, you might need more support. And we are also sharing the anonymous reports on Facebook to make more awareness and inviting people to talk about this to break the stigma. When we released this application in a 1 week, we got more than 10,000 women, 10,000 reports from women from all over the country. They loved it. They were anonymously reporting every kind of sexual harassment that they were facing, starting from catcalls, from touching, from groping, their experiences, even with rape and other kind of harassment from their family, from their friends, from their office bosses, from their teachers. So the system was flooding, and we were really traumatized to see how much prevalent this problem is, how much pain every woman was holding within them. When we gave this platform for them to talk, they then busted out. This readily hit many national and international news media, including BBC, New Scientist, and the national television of Bangladesh. And we were at that point, with this reports of sexual violence, once our database even crashed. So we had to move that to more a smarter cloud server. However, we also saw there were debates going on social media sometimes when women were saying that they were harassed, they were saying bad things by men. Sometimes some people actually fought back, and then they said they started blaming the victim. They said that it was probably the problem of the women because they were not safe. Probably they were wearing some provocating dress, or for not covering their heads. So over the time, we saw that these people were came up and they started saying bad things to the person who reported, and women were no longer feeling comfortable sharing their experiences, which the platform was originally built for. And there are also this kind of controversies coming in, when we were showing so many incidents happening on the map. Sometimes the parents were getting paranoid, they were getting afraid. So they were saying that, well, we will not probably allow our daughters to go outside. So the women were complaining, were you really helping us, or kind of more confining us within our home. So we readily changed this heat map to a safe route map. So we were suggesting the women how to take a safe path instead of showing them the whole picture of how many incidences are happening. So this application has now converted in a startup, which is one of the most famous startups in Bangladesh called Maya Apa, which has more than 50,000 downloads in the Google Play Store. So the main challenge that a computer science challenge that we are handling there, how to design technology where there is no data, where people were not talking, for example, this women in sexual harassment. And we are also started this programming camps for women where they could actually learn building this kind of application for themselves to move forward, because we try to solve only one problem, but they might have many other problems that they themselves need to take care of. So the next thing that I'll be discussing on, and I'll be briefly going over it, was the problem with this kind of a silence. For example, this is not only the women with sexual harassment experiences who are silent. There are factory workers who also do not talk about their problems because they fear losing their job. So this is a project that I done with the ready-made garments workers in Bangladesh. And when we asked them about their problems in their factory, they all say that, well, there's no problem. There's we're all happy. But then we asked them to draw pictures, one picture of their factory and one picture of the place where they live. And then we did psychometric analysis of those pictures. On the left, as you can see, this is an actual picture drawn by one of those participants. On the left, you can see the pictures are drawn with regular shapes like rectangle and straight lines. And on the left, there are more curves. And this analysis showed us that people were feeling freer when people feel freer, and you ask them to draw the picture, they will draw the pictures with more freehand curves. And when you will ask people to draw a picture of a place where they are very much confined with rules, they will use hard blocks. So we then started interviewing them based on these clues, and we found the sort of problems and this confinement that they found in their office places or in their factory. So now we are using the local painters to make a picture of this on this public vehicles. So these are rickshaws, which are widely popular in that part of the world, to draw these pictures on the body of the rickshaws so other people can see about these unheard voices of these factory workers, and these get their unheard stories get voice. We're also using the similar kind of matching algorithm that I showed you before to implement this solution. And this problem of visibility is also one of the challenges that we have. Many workers around the world, especially in developing countries, they work, but their word don't get visibility. Their words don't get visibility. Even if in your Twitter, a lot of people are talking about their problems, but people don't care about them. And this is one case where we are working with this mobile phone repairers in Bangladesh. So it's an underground market, and in countries in Central Asia, you'll find these people who are actually helping the poor people to use their mobile phones in a cheaper rate, but their work is not highlighted. Their work is not valued. So I worked with them for more than 2 years. I myself learned how to fix the phone, and all the arts and crafts that they have. I started writing about that, documenting that, and designing and developing better technologies for fixing a phone instead of making a new technology. The idea is that if you fix a phone, you actually reduce the electronic waste to the environment, and the technology itself makes the environment more sustainable. A lot of times when we think about digital technology and changing the country with ICT, we forget the fact that every technical device after using 3 or 4 years become a waste. And if we do not have this cycle ready for fixing and recycling electronic waste, then the country will start producing a lot of waste and polluting their own environment. So we built a platform for these mobile phone repairers in Bangladesh, where they could use advanced technologies to fix their mobile phones in a more sustainable way. And this also allowed me to work with other kinds of marginalized population. For example, the Uber drivers who are now the drivers in marginalized communities and developing countries, they have started using these apps and what kind of problems they are having. This is my project with Microsoft Research in India, where I was working with this taxi drivers, and we are documenting how they were now using these apps, which they wouldn't use before. Many of them are low literate, and it happens that sometimes instead of the drivers who are more skilled, the drivers who are actually more capable of using the mobile phones are getting more rides, and this is kind of like changing the dynamics that's happening in them. And now we were designing technologies how we could like help the more skilled drivers to still hold their job, so that their in future technology doesn't take away their jobs. So the final project that I'll be talking about is with this evicted people, the refugees who are forced to move from one place to another. And this becomes a particularly challenging thing, is that even if you solve all these problems with social support and visibility, the problem is when you are detached from your community, your society, how can you use those support? And this is oftentimes the case with this refugee people, for the people who are forcefully migrated. So I worked with this kind of population in Bangladesh who are like internally migrated, and I was trying to understand how these people were sustaining their livelihood and how these people were using computers. Could computers help them? And what I found that these people were still finding a way to live in an adverse situation using different kinds of creative activities like hacking, making, repairing. They're helping each other to get, like electricity line from the main power supply. They were fixing things. They were coming up with new technologies for helping their use of computers and other electronics. And the problem that happens is that when they move from one place to another, they would like miss this stable setting. So what we were designing for them, this is the smart house for the refugees, which they could actually pack like a box and move with them. And we made this home, first of all, built with sustainable materials. And the second, it was also a smart home with all kinds of technologies that they would actually need to start an IT-enabled environment whenever they unpack these. So since the refugees do not have a permanent home, we are trying to make everything possible to happen for them within this. This project actually won the Next Generation Sustainable Construction Award in 2014. So these were kind of like the examples how I am bringing together the idea of access, freedom, infrastructure, and visibility through my work and voice. And in future, I want to advance this framework to achieve the sustainable development goals set by United Nations. As you know, there are 17 goals that United Nations set in 2015. And my work is directly addressing these 5 goals of gender equality, reduced inequality, innovation and infrastructure, peace and justice, and responsible consumption. And the other goals are also indirectly related to the idea of voice. So these are some of the ongoing projects that I'm doing. I'm now working with autistic children and people with mental health who cannot also express their problems. How can we design technologies for helping them? And there are like 4 places in the world, including USA, Canada, India, and Bangladesh, where this project is going on. And this was funded by both USA and Canada. I'm working with the refugees and who cannot speak about their problems out of the fear of repatriation and how technology can help them. And this project is also going on in a number of places around the world, including the Syrian refugees in Toronto, the Iraqi refugees in Jordan, Syrian refugees in Turkey, Afghan refugees in Iran, and Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. And this project is also funded by the National Discovery Grant of Canada and Cunard New Researcher Award that I received in 2018. This is another project with electronic waste for helping the environment from pollution of electronics that I am conducting with this electronic waste workers in many places of the world, including USA, Canada, Czech Republic, and Bangladesh. And this was also funded by Canada Foundation of Innovation and Ontario Research Fund. These are the wonderful people who are collaborating with me over the time, and hopefully I'll have more collaborators from you and from other places. And also I am very thankful to the organizations who are helping me in my research, including Microsoft Research, Fulbright, the World Bank, and definitely the universities and NGOs. And all the funders who helped me with their funding, generous funding that made this research possible. So before closing, before ending my lecture, I want to bring in this quotation by one of the favorite scholars that I admire a lot, Professor Amartya Sen, who got Nobel Prize in economics in 90s. He said, "Development is freedom both through instrumental and constitutive means. Through my research, I ask, can voice provide us with such freedom?" Thank you.